Our panel stays. I want to turn to the wider context here, because this case is not just a debate about the proper use of force in that deadly exchange in the middle of one night. It's about broader and more systemic issues, like allegations that police bungled the legal requirements for that raid in the first place and filed false reports, a separate potential crime, and misled the public. Take the virtually empty police incident report, which listed Taylor's injuries as, quote, none. False. She was shot to death with 8 bullets. Later allegations that police tried to set up Taylor after her death. Meanwhile, there was new evidence casting doubt on the police claims that there was no body cam evidence whatsoever. And then the approach and mindset of these officers themselves. Remember, they are supposed to be under this legal review. Now, even well after the months of public outcry, consider new statements from Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly. He was shot in this raid. He was also one of the officers under review and cleared of any charges today. Just yesterday, he wrote this email to the entire police force saying the FBI aren't cops and they would, quote, piss their pants if they had to hold the line, but they'll, quote, go after you for a civil rights violation. He also wrote in the same email, we did the legal, moral, and ethical thing that night, but the criminals are the ones being, quote, canonized, and went on to say to his fellow officers, now go be the warriors you are. None of these peaceful protesters are worth your career or freedom, end quote, from just yesterday. It is obviously quite the remarkable public statement from an officer awaiting ruling on a potential charge, an officer openly impugning much of the fellow law enforcement organization of the FBI, which could still, of course, potentially make rulings in this case or decide there's a civil rights violation. He also attacked local civilian leaders who are overseeing this police department, which does suggest the mentality that links officers and prosecutors as on a team at the exclusion of any other entity, FBI, civilian control, the mayor, that might patrol their power. In fact, this is something our colleague Joy Reid touched on during some of our breaking coverage after this decision came down today.
The authority who will decide if your life is worth pursuing a case over is the partner of the police, their partner who works with them to make cases, who works with them every day, who knows them by first name, probably sends them Christmas cards, knows who their kids are, their friend, their partner.
Brittany Cooper, your view on all the above, because as an attorney and a journalist, I can stipulate reasonable minds may debate what happened in the 30 seconds of firing or the minute on either side of it. And yet, when you stack up the systemic evidence, what Joyce said, that email I just read from one of the potential defendants saying the FBI, they pissed their pants. They're not real cops. There's no civil rights reason to investigate anything. Your view of what this tells us?
Look, we have a problem with the police being lawless in this country, and they've been lawless since their inception. And I was reminded as I listened to Joy earlier and then during this segment of a quote from the famous anti-lynching activist Ida B. Wells, who in 1893 wrote a pamphlet called Lynch Law in All Its Phases. And she said quite clearly, those who commit the murders write the reports. And so, no, Daniel Cameron didn't commit the murder, but he's a party to those who did. And this is the reason why Black people have been so distrustful. We have to watch these people come out and yell at us about the rule of law. In every way, they are making a mockery of the rule of law. They are undermining. So we saw Daniel Cameron talking about that justice meant the search for truth while he lied to us. And it's important that we get to dissent and say that what we heard was a lie, that it was not the truth, that there were other truths that were present that were devalued. And too often we pussyfoot our analysis of this because we want to be seen as being reasonable, as being objective, as being able to hear these other sides of the case. But the law's objectivity is quite frequently used against Black people and our own experience of our violence at the hands of the police. And so why can't we believe Breonna Taylor's boyfriend when he said that at that early hour of the morning, he didn't hear anybody knocking on the door, yelling that they were the police. Somebody busted into the house. And so his thought was that he was going to defend himself and his girlfriend. That is what he did. And this idea that self-defense appends to the police, but not to the people who occupy the houses, suggests that only white people get to defend themselves when the law busts into their houses. And I know that these are hard truths for people to hear, but we have a 26-year-old unarmed black woman who is dead in her house at the hands of the police. Nobody is being held accountable. And so if there's any day that we're going to take responsibility for that, any day that we're going to stand up and say, it is a perversion of justice to tell us that what is the injustice that was done here was inconveniencing and endangering the neighbors and not killing this black girl. That is absurd. It is perverse. It is enraging. It is the time to say it. It is the time to not equivocate. What Daniel Cameron did was he equivocated on behalf of the state. That is why black people are angry. That is why we continue to disbelieve that the courts are a system that can actually render justice for us. And something has to change. We are tired of being called upon to be reasonable and to respect the rule of law when the rule of law has told us clearly that not only will it not protect us, but that sometimes for its own interest will actively murder us and then tell us that we better be all right about it.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.